Since we last spoke, Florida State has landed 2 transfer commits, one from Kyle Morlock from Shorty University and Casey Roddick, an offensive line from Colorado. All that and more on today's edition of Locked On Seminoles. Dave, let's ride.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drake here, and in the stream yard, I got Mr. David Wise. Davey, what's going on, my guy?
Drake, I'm back in the motherland of Tallahassee. It feels good to be back in the town of football winners, as opposed to a team that, a city with a team that kicks a field goal with seconds remaining to avoid being shut out 30-0 in a bowl game, or a team that's not playing in a bowl game. So it could be worse.
It could be worse, folks. Today's episode of Locked On Seminoles brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Most importantly, terms and conditions do apply. But Dave, we haven't been here for a while, and folks, I'm sorry, my voice is it's going a little bit, but we're here to power through. And the Seminoles powered through with laying 2 different kids at key spots on this roster. Tell us a little more about Kyle Shorter, the tight end from Shorter University. Kyle Morlock from Shorter University, the 6'7" kind of freakazoid baby Gronk, as I like to call him.
Yeah. So here's the thing: you're not going to find advanced stats on this kid because they just don't keep stats on kids from Shorter tight end the way they do from Power 5 or FBS schools. But what we can tell you is that kid wasn't he the number 1 ranked transfer tight end in the country?
Oh, I think it was number 2 behind
2. Okay, so we got
behind
number 1 and number 2.
Yeah,
what I can tell you is this: that kid is 6'7". He's athletic. He's a matchup nightmare. He's going to be used in the passing game. This tells me something. After already landing the number 1 tight end in the transfer class, the coaching staff was not done filling out that room. We talked after we landed our first transfer tight end of the class about the fact that we might not be done at the position. And Mike Norvell loved him some tight ends at Memphis. He loves running 2 tight end sets. He loves getting creative with his usage and flexing out of tight ends. So it was clear that he did not think that the room coming back next year was versatile enough to do what the staff wanted to do with this offense. We talked about the fact that this offense had become more multidimensional through the addition of a high-level pass-catching tight end already. We now have 2 of them, and it's going to be a matchup nightmare. You now have 6'7" on this side if you flex him out wide. You now have 6'7" on that side with Johnny Wilson. You have guys like Micah Pittman and Winston Wright on the inside. That is, my God, going to be just an embarrassment of riches for Jordan Travis to choose from in terms of who to throw the ball to. It seems to me that the coaching staff is intent on going all in for next year. With all these kids coming back, it is evident that is our money year, so to speak, for the staff to really push for an ACC championship and a playoff team. Not that we're not going to be able to after that, but next year feels like the year. So if that's the case, and the coaching staff thinks so too, you imagine you're going to go out, like we talked about last week, and get impact kids with these transfer spots. We have a lot of kids leaving themselves into the transfer portal, kids that aren't starters here or anything, kids that were, contributors and may have had roles next year, but that weren't pivotal players for the success of this team. So we said we needed to fill those spots with impact players who are going to affect the scoreboard. Kyle Morlock is a kid that's not just going to be a 6'7" decoy out there. He's going to be in his own right somebody who's going to catch some passes. But just the fact that he's going to be out on the field at that size with that athleticism and that pass catching pedigree, that's going to make it very difficult. Pick your poison on who to defend. I don't see how you're going to be able to double team anybody. And that's really going to open up an already opened up running game. So greatest show on turf style stuff coming up. I expect to see some Big 12 type numbers out of this passing game next year.
And not only there's more options in the weapons room, or wide receiver room, tight ends room, kind of open things up, but also the trenches open things up as well. With us landing one Mr. Casey Roddick, Colorado transfer, they don't want to go play for Coach Prime. He's coming in town. He's committed this past, I think, last night or earlier in the middle of the day yesterday. Dave, please let the folks know.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit more about me off camera, how you feel about Casey Roddick. Tell the folks what you feel about Casey Roddick coming into the fold.
Yeah. So at first blush, I was a little curious about the take. Digging deeper, you saw a lot of stats thrown around on Twitter last night. I think with the intent of calming everyone down. Nobody
only 3 sacks in 4 years, by the way.
Right. That's the thing. Nobody didn't think we weren't going to take some offensive linemen in the transfer portal. But again, this is the message, guys and girls. We need to be taking impact players who are going to compete for starting positions or be more than just serviceable warm bodies as depth. More than that. It can't just be that anymore. We can't just be taking kids with the intent of like them being maybe third stringers. So this kid, I wondered where he would fit in. As an offensive guard, that kid allowed 1 sack last year. He was credited with 1 sack allowed at Colorado. His pass blocking grade is off the charts. He was their highest graded starting offensive lineman last year at Colorado. They played some good teams last year. They played Utah. They played Oregon. They played Oregon State. They played USC. And in some of those games, he had seriously high pass blocking grades. Some of them he didn't, but some of them he did. Including against Utah to end the year, he had a really high pass blocking grade. So he's not going to be a great run blocker. That grade has been consistently bad throughout his career. I don't expect a Tiger to change his stripes this late in his career. Although maybe it was a coaching thing. Who knows?
Also, maybe it could be the running back from there too.
It could be, but although I will say this, I don't think so. What you saw out of Florida State's running game this year was an unreal performance, individual performances by running backs, going above and beyond in spite of some otherwise poor run blocking. That's what you saw out of this running back room. What Trey Benson did this year, for example, was the Trey Benson show. It wasn't the run blocking show. That's not what happened. You could go look up the PFF grades on that yourself. Our run blocking grades were not good. And that's been the case for a few years now, where what we've done in the running game has been in spite of the run blocking. So I don't think that was my first thought. It was, I kind of thought we'd go out and get a guy who can run block, since that's been, a problem area for this team. But what this tells me is that this coaching staff is serious about protecting Jordan Travis. And he came back next year, I am sure they made him a promise that they were going to protect him. They were going to protect his health for the draft, and they were going to protect his blind side and his front side and every other side, so that he could throw the ball, put up prolific numbers, score points, and get to the NFL. And this is the kind of kid who's going to keep Jordan Travis upright and who's going to pass block his ass off, possibly more so than anyone else on this team that we have. So I do expect him to compete for a starting job because of his pass blocking abilities. And I think it is one of those kind of impact quality pickups that I was talking about.
And he wasn't the only offensive lineman that we saw actually in town this past weekend. We'll discuss more of the official visitors in the next segment. But overall, I think it's a great take. I think that's basically, you need to beef up the interior of the offensive line with Dylan Gibbons gone. Dimitri Emmanuel is also gone. Right. But people forget, you might be bringing back Kane Lyle from medical redshirt. You bringing back Bless Harris for running with right tackle spot. So overall, the state of the offensive line to me is in great hands, and honestly, in Atkins we trust overall, to be honest with you.
That is exactly right, Drake. And Atkins we trust, and in you I trust to tell our audience about something they should hear about that'll make their lives better.
Well, folks, as I said earlier, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Dave, you used it before, right?
I absolutely have, Drake. I work at a law firm. For those of you who don't know, I'm an attorney. And it is very difficult to find paralegals these days in North Florida, in all of Florida, all over the country. LinkedIn jobs made that easier. Everybody's on LinkedIn these days. Everybody you would consider attracting as a candidate is on LinkedIn these days. And posting a job there is super easy. And possibly more importantly for everybody, it is free. I couldn't recommend it higher. It is much better than those other job sites. I promise you, give it a shot. You literally have nothing to lose.
You really don't. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster than ever before. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free, and most importantly, for the free. As always, terms and conditions do apply. And we are back. We are rocking and rolling here on Locked On Seminoles. Thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every single day. And David, we had a question from the YouTube comments. Mr. Micro Venture Funding asked, what does his team need to do in heading the portal in order to be a playoff team for next season, or what are the most needs around there? And we kind of saw overall this past weekend with the kids that were coming into town. You saw from the high school ranks, Andy Jean, the University of Florida wide receiver, commit into town. You saw Christopher Otto, an offensive lineman. But then you saw John Campbell, another Miami transfer offensive line. I think he'll be committing later this week, a tackle. And you also saw Fentrell Cypress, a defensive back from Virginia.
Yes.
I think he's another top 5 kid at a position of need. Dave, what do you make of these kids coming in? And also, what do you make overall the strategy of this program heading into deeper in the offseason?
Okay, let me preface this by saying I care about our high school recruiting very much so, and I guess I care about more. I definitely care about more offensive line recruiting, like you said, the Miami candidate Campbell. But it's got to be attacking positions of need, and again, bringing in kids who are going to compete for starting positions at positions that either are losing someone or were struggling last year, which is why Fentrell Cypress is one of the most alluring transfer portal candidates to me, because he was a high level DB at Virginia. That is something this past year we really, really at times struggled. It's funny because you go look towards the end of the season, and as the season unfolded, we ended up with the top, least passing yards allowed by any team in the ACC per game. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. It's hard to say that and what I just said in the same breath. However, individual coverage struggled last year. This defensive back room got better as the year went on, but it started bad. And it underperformed, I think, as a whole throughout the year relative to what we thought they would do. So bringing in a kid like Fentrell Cypress, who I would expect to be a starting cornerback immediately on stepping on campus. And if not a starter, that kid is going to be in the rotation instantly. No questions asked, he's in the rotation. And is a kid that I would expect by the end of the year to be one of our highest ranked DBs. So you can bring in a kid who would be one of your highest ranked DBs, I believe, by the end of the year and throughout the year. And that's what I consider a position of need at this point, because if you're going to score points and you're going to score points explosively, that means your defense is going to spend time on the field. And you know, I think our run defense was solid enough this last year. That's going to be another problem I'll get to in a second regarding the transfer portal. But shoring up certain positions that struggled at times last year, we don't have that problem on offense, I believe, anywhere except maybe the offensive line, one or two more offensive linemen. But the entire rest of the offense is set in terms of the transfer portal. Move over to the defense then. You got to replace guys on the defensive line. You got Tatum Bethune back at linebacker. Looks like Amari Gainer's headed out. So maybe a linebacker. But the rest of it, man, I would love to see some more DBs. Give me Fentrell Cypress. Give me another cornerback. Give me a safety. I think we need a few kids at that position who are going to compete for or earn starting jobs immediately, because that's one of those positions that I think is going to have to step up next year.
I mean, also, one of the things I didn't want to cut you off, but I think it was important for the folks to know too is, yes, we did rank highly in passing yards allowed, but also if you saw the DB play, the scheme wise, everything was leave everything in front of you.
Yep.
So that kind of was it's kind of lying with statistics in a little bit of a sense. It's also like scheme wise or teaching wise.
Right.
I wasn't a big fan of how the DBs kind of were implemented or initiated kind of like in the scheme, but I agree. Fentrell Cypress is a kid that he is a defensive back that's going to be either here for one song or one song only. And that typically to me, he's a dog. He was all ACC defensive back last year with his teammate too, I think, who was still at UVA. I also agree that we need another safety. I think Jamie Robinson is gone. I think Akeem Dent actually will be coming back. I think basically he does need another year before he goes off to the NFL. But I agree that offensive line might be the next spot to talk about. And John Campbell, who was another Miami transfer, that's a kid that was their best lineman last year.
Right.
Now, granted, Miami is bringing in a bunch of 5-star linemen, but it's hard for any offensive lineman to start for day one because they're still not the same size as most of the Power 5 level. I like the only offensive lineman I think I saw that started as a freshman ever in college was Evan Neal over in Alabama. But he was successful. We saw Dante Lucas do the same thing, and he was good, but then he got hurt because he was so much smaller than everybody else. So tell the folks a little bit more about John Campbell from the Miami area.
Yeah, Jake. I don't have a ton to add to that. Like you said, he was Miami's best offensive lineman. I don't know if that team or whoever the hell is doing things over there. I guess John Ruiz is the coach over there. Good for him, I suppose. And Mario Cristobal is now a figurehead who's bad at football coaching, so that's cool. If they're going to let their best offensive lineman go and not do whatever they have to do to keep him because they have kids coming in from high school.
To be fair, they did land the number one offensive line.
Hold on. No. Stop. No. No one cares. Literally no one cares. There is something to say about continuity. If your best offensive lineman, you have a chance to bring him back or just let him walk, you don't let him walk. That's fair.
That's a good point. That's
a practical reality. You're not expecting these high school kids to come in and play immediately. Julian Armello was a very highly rated offensive lineman out of high school. That's what happens. I mean, our offensive lineman wasn't exactly a dynamo last year, but yet you still didn't see Julian Armello starting. Why is that? Because offensive linemen should not start right away out of high school. They just shouldn't. Unless you're Blastoise or whatever the hell Alabama feeds those kids over there. But
Blastoise or Bowser.
Look, right. So yeah, I'll take Miami's best offensive lineman. I will take Colorado's best offensive lineman. We're cherry picking other teams' best offensive linemen who, if Campbell comes here, he's going to compete for a starting job at the tackle spot. And if he's not starting, again, you saw what happens to offensive lines throughout the year. Attrition isn't a risk. It's not a possibility. It's not even a probability. It's a certainty. There will be kids that get injured along the offensive line. That tackle spot is vulnerable. This coaching staff, again, made a promise to Jordan Travis to keep him safe. And this is the kind of kid that you bring in, if he does commit to us, with the intent of him playing football for us next year, not sitting on the bench, not being a rally guy in the locker room. This kid would be coming in to play football for us next year. And I expect that would happen. So it feels like what we're doing is going out and getting mercenaries, because that's what Fentrell Cypress is, like you said. He's coming here for one reason. So he'll be here for 1 year, and then he'll go to the NFL. Which means that kid is trying to make his money. I think John Campbell falls into that same mold where he would be coming here with the intent of earning a starting spot and trying to get to the NFL to make that money. That feels like kind of a theme here. I don't think the coaching staff is trying to think. They have to try to think ahead to like, crap, what's this going to look like 3 years from now? But the reality is, their main focus, as it should be, for how to maximize Florida State's win total in that 2023 season. And these are the kind of kids that are impact players that I believe contribute to that possibility.
I will say Fentrell Cypress potentially has 2 seasons left, so actually that would be dope to have him for 2 songs.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
That kid's also really he's an NFL day one prospect.
But in addition to that, if we have the kind of season that we're gearing up to have and believe we could have, meaning like an 11-1 type season next year, you're going to see an exodus, not because kids don't want to play for us or because they don't love it here, or because they don't love the staff or their teammates. No, none of that. But because they will have maximized their draft stock. because this team would have been so good and there would have been so many both individual and collective team efforts that went so well. And that's not the worst thing in the world. If we are so good that it's causing kids to make millions of dollars more than they ever otherwise could have or would have, great. Bring it on.
That, and also, like, some kids also probably see the writing on the wall, like, hey, like, I guess now, like, I'm not a day one starter here, and that's okay. I mean, we saw Demore Tate, a former 5-star, enter the portal yesterday too as well. So it's a good problem to have. Best luck to him also too as well. And overall, Fentrell Cypress, I think, will be a great pickup. John Campbell, I think, will be committing, like I said earlier, later this week to the good guys. Because remember, Wednesday is now sign day, and that's also a very important thing because Keldric Faulk, we'll talk about next segment, may be going somewhere else actually after the offseason.
Great. Can't wait to hear about it.
Campo, do you know what you want to hear about?
What is that, Drake?
And that's our friends over at Bet Online, because folks, it's time for the Fade Dave segment of the day of the week of the millennia. A sickness will not let me stop from reading that. David.
Yes.
Folks, what you don't know, David has a hatred for one specific team more than any other team I've ever known, besides the Wake Forest. And that is Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin is a 3.5-point favorite.
No, they're
Oklahoma State Cowboys.
I don't care.
Let me finish. The Oklahoma State Cowboys. They play December 27th on a Tuesday at 10:15 p.m. Over under is set at 43. David, let the folks know how much you love some Wisconsin, especially now with Luke Fickell as their head coach for next season.
Listen, guys, I'm not talking about this game. If anybody out there knows a way to get Wisconsin's football team disbanded, please, for the love of God, do it. And do Iowa while you're out there too. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter nationally. They're never going to win anything of relevance. They're not going to win this game because they're not going to win anything of relevance. Oklahoma State could play their worst game ever and they'd still beat them because Wisconsin can't score. Don't care who they bring in as a coach. That school is boring. Their offense is boring. Their defense is boring. Their special teams is boring. No one cares. That's why no one watches their football games, including their 4 own fans. So, yeah, give me Oklahoma State plus anything. I get points in that game. Are you kidding me? Fantastic. I don't care if Spencer Sanders isn't playing because he's transferring. Cool.
Well, shout out to Trent from Locked On Hawkeyes because that dude is a very nice guy. But, folks, ride with Dave. Take Wisconsin minus 3.5. Or, as always, simply fade Dave. Take Wisconsin minus 3.5. Or back Dave with Oklahoma State at plus 3.5. All right, Dave, we're gonna wrap up today's show, and we need to talk about Mr. Keldric Faulk. Keldric Faulk did come in for a visit this past weekend. He left, I think, early Sunday morning, but he stopped by Auburn and Hugh Freeze on the way back home. He is from the Alabama area. Want to check that out. I want to say that Brandon Simone from 247 had a write-up discussing how he wanted his mom basically was like, hey, check out some of the home options that you have. I want to ask you that, the transfer portal has been very successful. The high school rank still kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. I wanted to ask your opinion on how the Keldric Faulk situation unfolds. If he stays with us, or if he decommits.
Dude, you're asking the wrong. I'm the wrong podcast host to be answering this question because I don't know jack about high school recruiting. What I do know is that it's going to matter for this team eventually to be landing high-level high school recruits. Right now, mashing the transfer portal button is the right move, because that's immediate success. But you're gonna need to snowball some back-to-back successful high school recruiting classes. And Keldric Faulk is exactly the kind of kid that we need to be landing from high school. He's going to be an impact player on the edge, and we have a now long line of proud defensive linemen that we put into the NFL and are going to be putting into the NFL. So it just felt like that kid was going to be the next man up out of high school, at least. So if we do end up losing him, that is really disappointing. Had we landed the high school class that we have in the fold right now, I wouldn't have been upset. I would have left something to be desired, but I wouldn't have been upset. Losing a kid like that's going to rub me the wrong way, especially when you see Miami out there landing all these 5-star and high 4-star kids. That's irritating. It doesn't bother me because I know they're not going to do anything with it, and those kids are all going to be in the transfer portal soon. And Miami goes 4-8 next year against that pitiful schedule. So I at the end of the day, I don't really care what they're doing. But if we're gonna be competing with actual good teams, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, those kind of schools, if we're going to be competing against them, we're going to need to approach something somewhere in the arena of what they're doing in terms of high school recruiting. You saw how Jimbo Fisher stockpiled those highly rated recruiting classes, although that was before the transfer portal era, officially the transfer portal era. You saw him stockpiling those mega high school classes, and that ultimately paid off once you got those guys in the system for a few years. Those were the kids that spearheaded that national championship team. So I would love to get back to that. And that's why this loss would be so disappointing. Although it's a kid from Alabama, and you always expect those highly rated kids from Alabama to stay in state, especially at Alabama, or if not them, then Auburn. So it was always going to be tough to keep this kid. It would just feel really disappointing. Like, when are we going to pick it up on the high school trail? Because I don't know the answer. Nobody knows the answer yet to can you win a championship dominating or predominantly recruiting out of the transfer portal. We don't know that answer yet. And I would love to find out with us being the case study of that, I guess. But I still think the emphasis on high school recruiting sooner or later is going to have to step up. So yeah, that is all I have to say. Really hope that doesn't happen. And I don't know who you have on your board to replace him with at the high school level, but it's not going to be of his same talent level.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think one last thing we do to touch on, the big name that just entered the transfer portal is one Mr. Travis Jr. And that's something that we do want to touch on real quick before we head out today. Dave, I'm going to hand it off to you to not talk about this, but I'll sign off because I'm not going to lie to you. My throat's killing me. So
I got you.
Take us home, Big Bird.
Okay. Wow. I can't believe this happened, boys and girls. Travis Hunter stayed there and entered the transfer portal after just 2 years. What a shocking development. Yeah, of course, Travis Hunter entered the transfer portal when Deion Sanders left. That is what you call the sun rising the next morning. Everybody knew that was going to happen. Travis Hunter wasn't doing anything special going to Jackson State. He was just following Deion Sanders. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up at Colorado anyways, although he hasn't gained a pound since he's been at Jackson State. I would love him to come to Florida State because I think a weight room could do him a lot of good, like an actual weight room. And the strength and conditioning staff. I think he would here if he put some weight on in the offseason. I think he could compete for playing time at the maybe in the wide receiver room, but definitely in the return game and potentially in the defensive back room, depending on who else we bring in. The kid's electric when he's route running and when he's high pointing a football, but he needs to put on some weight badly. And I think he could do that here. But look, if he doesn't come here, I'm just going to laugh it off even more because his whole thing was how loyal he was to Florida State. How it was his dream to play here. Okay, here we are. You're not at Jackson State anymore. Are you going to come on down to your dream school? If you don't, good riddance. If you do, that's a good decision because I think you'll put the weight on you need here. And I think you'll have the opportunity to excel like the 5-star recruit you were. But look, that's all I have to say about the situation. I don't want to say anything else negative, especially in case anybody in the Hunter camp is listening to this, because I do hope he comes here, truly. I think it would serve him well. But that's all I have to say about that. Drake, I know your throat hurts, so I'm going to send it off for us here. Thank you for listening to us today and each and every day and making Locked On Seminoles your first listen. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. We love you. I love you. Drake loves you. He just doesn't have the voice to say it anymore. For our podcast, find us anywhere you find your podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, and all the other places, the names of which I don't know at the moment. And for the YouTube, hit that like button if you like this video, which you should because we're good at football and we're talking about it. Subscribe to the channel and ding that little bell. It'll turn on your notifications and let you know when our episodes drop. And as always, leave us a comment. My comment, what are your top transfer portal wants and needs? And do you want Travis Hunter transferring here? Why or why not? I want to hear your thoughts. I want to answer your questions and talk about them. And I want to see you next time here on Locked On Seminoles.
Take care, everybody.
Go Noles.